So, guys, look at things from Poirier's perspective, right? I mean, when Poirier lost to Khabib, he probably felt like his life was over. I realize that's way too dramatic. I'm just sharing with you these athletes live in a very small bubble, and as cool as they look on TV and as glamorous as that looks with the cameras on them, their lives are not wonderful. They're very hard. Dustin Poirier's life is very, very hard. 2 sessions a day, walking into a gym in an absolute mega gym of American Top Team in Florida. I mean, it's iron on iron. That put it in this perspective. When Dustin Poirier leaves the front door and kisses his wife goodbye and says, "I'll see you in a couple of hours," he gets into a car to drive to go spar with George Masvidal. Have you ever thought about it in that way? I mean, imagine if you have to go fight George Masvidal. Imagine if you were in the cage with George Masvidal, or you're the three guys from that story I told you about at the club with George Masvidal. But imagine you now got to fight George. Poirier has to do it every day. Every day. Not he gets to do it. He has to go and do this. And by the way, as impressive as that name of George Masvidal is, that's not like the hardest round he's going to go. I mean, he has Amasov's in the room. Austin Vanderford's in the room. I mean, I could go on and we can name drop all day long. American Top Team at one point, think of this go around. Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, Dustin Poirier, Colby Covington, George Masvidal, Hector Lombard. That's off the top of my head. Imagine, and you got to go 3 to 5 rounds. Every day you're going to go 3 to 5 rounds. So you pick from those any way you want to do it. What 3 do you want? What 5 do you want? I only bring this to you because his life is very hard. It's very difficult. Aside from the cameras and the glitz, it's very difficult. And that just won't be seen. Will never be seen. Dustin Poirier's a star. Everything's going his way. It's a tough grind. So when I share with you something as dramatic as when he lost to Khabib, he probably felt like his life was over. Yes, I'm being dramatic, but at least his sports, where's he going to go? Where does Dustin Poirier go from here? And he goes into this fight with Dan Hooker, okay? He goes from the fight with Khabib, where they built an arena in his honor, to fighting Hooker in a crowd of nobody. I mean, it's just the world was just different. And he went out and did it, and he did it for 25 minutes hard fight. Split decision, almost didn't go his way, does go his way, moves into this main event of what Dana has declared is a top 2 pay-per-view sell of all time. I mean, you think about it from Poirier's perspective, and now think about how he wakes up today. Conor had all of these options a few days ago. I mean, $50 million offer from the Paul kid, by example. In talks to go and box Manny Pacquiao, by example. Can go and do whatever he wants in the world of MMA, by example, to all of a sudden, Conor's waking up, whether he's right or wrong. I tend to think in about 2 weeks, it's a distant memory. I believe that Conor went into this fight the biggest star in the sport. I believe he wakes up today the biggest star in the sport. And I believe within 2 weeks, we forgot that this has even happened. Broad stroke statement. Point that I'm trying to make, Poirier took it all. Poirier is now the one with the options. Poirier's name was coming out of this Paul kid's mouth, who apparently has $50 million in an escrow account somewhere. Pacquiao is now talking about Poirier. Floyd Mayweather is now talking about Poirier. When you get in the cage, whatever you bring, all the chips are on the table. There is no title match. Non-title match. Everything you bring is now on the line. Poirier took it all. So Poirier, who a couple of fights ago, which represents about a year, feels as though this could be the beginning of the death of his MMA career. He wakes up today. He's being called out by Conor McGregor. Every fighter's dream. Every fighter, this Paul kid I'm talking about, Mayweather, Pacquiao, they're all hoping that Conor says their name. Conor is saying Poirier's name. Pretty interesting. Nate Diaz is saying Poirier's name. And if you want to talk about the biggest stars in the sport, yeah, sure, you're going to throw Conor in there. And then that's going to be real arguable opposite George Masvidal. And that's going to be a real tough conversation when you bring in Nate Diaz. But those are the 3 biggest draws. Those are your 3 guaranteed box office hits in the sport today. Of course, absent George St. Pierre, who I believe is absent. So if you're Poirier, you're looking around the room, you're going, man, I can probably beat everybody here. And on any given night, I for sure can beat anybody here. But the three biggest guys in the sport, one of them's my teammate. The other two are offering their services. Pretty cool spot. So what do you do? What do you do? How do you turn down a fight with Nate Diaz? How do you possibly do that? The numbers are going to be the same. The parity is going to be different. I think that Poirier can live with 1-1. I can personally live with 1-1 if I went last, right? If I lost to a guy, but then I came back and I got the second and I beat a guy, I can live with it. And I share that, I personalize it. That happened to me with Tito and I didn't get to go last. Tito went last. And I will tell you, it feels different. I don't feel like we're 1-1. I feel like I got beat by the worst guy in the sport. I mean, right? In all fairness, but it's the way it goes. Sometimes you got to admit it. So I want to ask you guys, very sincerely, I want your comments. I want your feedback on this. Sometimes I think that you guys misplace your power. You have a ton of power. There are power in numbers. And I do want to hear your perspective, but play it through in your head. Don't come to me off the cuff. I'm giving you the option of Poirier versus Conor, Poirier versus Diaz. Either fight's going to be for the belt, okay? This is a scenario that I'm painting for you, but I want to hear from you, and I don't want you to just go, Conor, Diaz. I want you to think about it. What are you more likely to buy? And I don't mean by pushing the button and kicking in your $49.95 on ESPN. I mean, what are you most likely to swallow and accept? That Conor's next fight is going to be for the belt, or that Diaz's next fight is going to be for the belt. And I feel as though Diaz has a very good argument because he's changing weight classes. Diaz's last fight was a title fight. Complain about that all you want. I was there and I watched the title get put around George Masvidal's waist. It was for a title. There was controversy and it was at a different weight class. And historically speaking, when guys change weight classes, as long as they had a good solid ranking at this one, they can move into a number one ranking if they change weight classes. It's why I've argued for you. Tyron Woodley, who does not listen to me, I wish would have gone to 185. I think Tyron Woodley would cut the pack. I don't care what his record is in the last 12 months or 15 months. I think Tyron Woodley changing to 185 would cut the pack. This isn't a talk about Tyron Woodley. I offer you that because I think the same is true for Nate Diaz. The fact that his last fight was a loss while being for a title at a different weight class, I think in many ways is something easier to swallow. And by the way, there's parity. And by the way, I just hit you in the door with something very tough. Because if you're going to do the whole, if it makes dollars, it makes sense routine, if you're going to pull that one on me, you can't act as though we're talking about really big numbers here. Is Conor versus Poirier a great draw? You bet your ass it is. Is Poirier versus Diaz a really big draw? You bet your ass it is. It's a tough one. That's a decision that Poirier will get to weigh in on. First time in Poirier's career. Poirier is not used to sitting down at the table with Dana and holding a few of the cards. He's used to listening. But Dana will show him this respect. Dana will go to him. I promise you. Mark my words. He will say, what do you want to do? And then Dana will say, well, here's what I was thinking. But that's how the conversation will go. Now, for the first time ever, Poirier has some options. And Poirier's not the scumbag who's going to go run after this Pacquiao fight or who's going to run after the Jake Paul fight. Poirier is going to stay right here with you guys, his family. But he's going to have a very interesting choice. And by the way, I don't mean to discard Michael Chandler, but Poirier said at the press conference, I'm really not interested in Chandler. And he paid him his due and said, look, he looks great, but he just beat a guy that I just beat. If you think that is enough to impress me, he's been here one time. There's another guy, his name's Charles Oliveira, who's a great fighter. And Chandler looks like a great fighter. But to get to me, you're going to have to do a little iron on iron around here, not just beat someone that I beat. Go fight Oliveira. And you know what? If you're in Poirier's shoes and you don't get those guys together, that means you have to go fight them both. I don't blame Poirier at all for saying, you guys go get together. One of you up your stock around here and then come and see me. Smart play by Poirier, but I also think that he's likely to get his way. I think Poirier is very likely to get his way, and I think Poirier is very likely in the crosshairs of a choice between two, Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. And the paycheck is not going to change so significantly that Dana won't sit down and listen. But what a difference a day has made in this sport. What a difference a day has made. And I cannot imagine that Poirier got the call to fight Dan Hooker on a non-pay-per-view 5-round main event and was overly excited, but he did it anyway. And all he's asking of Michael Chandler is that Chandler go and do the same thing. Hey, I had to eliminate a lot of guys. I want you to go and eliminate a guy. Go and get rid of Charles Oliveira for me, or vice versa. Oliveira, get rid of Chandler for me. I don't care which one of you does it. One of you get rid of one of them, and I'll do you a favor by seeing you at the end.